Right, so hello, you'd like me to begin now?
Okay, let me do a brief introduction, Sarah.
Of course.
Başlıyoruz şimdi, tamam. Hoş geldiniz webinarımıza. Bugün İngiltere'de yatılı lise eğitimini konuşacağız. Oswestry School yetkilisi, Admissions Director, Bayan Sarah Hicklin'le beraber İngiltere'de lise eğitimini konuşacağız. Sorularınız için Q&A kısmından bize sorularınızı iletebilirsiniz. Çeviri de yapılacak. Sarah, first of all, thank you very much for your participation.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, you can start.
Thank you. Well, yes, that's me. I always wear a stripy t-shirt, so you'll always know it's me. My name is Sarah Hicklin, and I'm the Director of Admissions at Oswestry School, which is a boarding and day school in the United Kingdom. Originally, I am from London, and about 20 years ago, my husband and I moved with our 4 children up to Shropshire, which is the area of the UK where Oswestry School is. And for the past 10 years, I've been the Director of Admissions, but I've had over 30 years of experience now in independent schools. So I know schools both as an employee, as working in a school, but also as a mother. As I mentioned, 4 children, all educated at boarding schools. So I think I am probably quite well placed to understand the investment. It's a financial investment and an emotional investment, sending your children to boarding schools. Over to you, Sibel.
Yes. Londralı Sarah ve şu anda bu okulun bulunduğu muhitte Shropshire Countryside'da yaşıyor. Son 10 yılını admission başvurulardan sorumlu direktör olarak geçirmiş Oswestry School'da. Ama bağımsız liselerle ilgili de 30 yılı geçkin bir deneyimi var aslında. Aynı zamanda 4 çocuk annesi ve çocukları da yatılı lisede okudukları için aslında hani bu süreci yani bu yatırımın özel okulda okumanın yatırımının ne demek olduğunu çok iyi anlıyor. Sarah.
Thank you. So that's a little bit about me. So now I'm going to tell you, hopefully, a lot more about Oswestry School. Right. I can't seem to stop sharing at the moment, so let's see. Little bit of technical issues. There we are.
Okay.
Right. So now I'm going to tell you just a little bit more about Oswestry School. So hopefully bear with me.
Okay.
There we are. So Oswestry School, which, as I say, is in the UK, was founded, as you can see here, in 1407. So it is one of the oldest schools in the United Kingdom. Over 600 years of heritage. It's a school that has both British pupils and pupils from all over the world. I think currently we have 22 different nationalities within the school, but the majority of children that come to Oswestry School are British. This is just a little bit of information for those few overseas students that do come to the school.
600 yıllık bir geçmişi olan bir okul aslında. 1407'de kurulmuş. Dolayısıyla İngiltere'nin en eski okullarından bir tanesi. Hem gündüz okulu hem yatılı okul diyebiliriz aslında.
Thank you. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that as we're discussing it, you can also read it as well for those of you that want to. So as I mentioned, Oswestry School is over 600 years old, and it's one of the oldest schools in England, boarding and day. Now, it's not Hogwarts, not like Harry Potter. It's not a big castle. It's a campus that's located 5 minutes from a very safe, very old-fashioned town in Shropshire called Oswestry.
5 dakikalık bir mesafe var aslında kasabaya. Kasabaya çok yakın. Böyle geleneksel bir İngiliz kasabası olarak düşünebilirsiniz aslında bulunduğu lokasyonu. Çok güzel, kırsal bir kesim ama gerçekten çok güzel bir kırsal bir manzarası var.
Thank you. So the closest airport to Oswestry School is Manchester. So Manchester is about a 75-minute drive away. We're about 3 hours away from London. But to be perfectly honest, it's like 30 years away from London. It's a very old-fashioned, traditional town. Although we have big cities close by, like Manchester, which is very convenient to fly in, the atmosphere of this location in the UK is quite unique, and it's extremely safe. People are very polite. It's a very different way of life from living in a city.
En yakın havalimanları, uluslararası havalimanları Manchester, 75 dakika araba mesafesinde. Heathrow Uluslararası Havalimanı var, 3 saat gene araba mesafesinde. Aynı zamanda bir tren istasyonunda bulunmakta. Bu da Londra'ya çok rahatlıkla bir ulaşım sağlıyor.
Now there are currently in the school there are around 475 pupils, so it's not a huge school. Now, about 110 of those pupils are from ages 4 to 11. Now, they're obviously day pupils. They don't live on the campus. They come in the mornings for their lessons and they go home to their families in the afternoon. But the remaining 365 are what we call senior schools, so the 11 to 19, and about 35% of them board. So they actually live on the campus.
Ortalama 475 öğrencisi, yani şu an için 475 öğrencisi bulunan bir okul. 4 ila 19 yaş arasında. Senior School dediğimiz 11-19 yaş aralığındaki öğrencilerin %35'i yatılı olarak okulda konaklıyorlar kampüste. Sara.
Thank you. So I don't know if it's the same in Turkey, but the majority of British boarding schools, pupils wear a uniform. So it's very democratic. Everybody has to wear the same thing. So they wear a uniform throughout the day. If they're older, if they're between the ages of 16 and 18, which are the last 2 years of high school education in the UK, they wear a business suit. So they're expected to look what we would say appropriate for business. So they're all wearing the same clothes.
Birleşik Krallık'ta okulların çoğunda üniforma giymek zorunlu. Dolayısıyla bu okulun da bir üniforması var. Gayet demokratik bir şekilde herkes aynı üniformayı giyiyor.
Now, I don't know what experience you've had, information you have about other schools in other parts of the world. I know in Canada and the US there's a lot of homestay. In the majority of UK schools, and certainly at Oswestry School, all the boarders live on the campus. So they're based on the campus all the time. Obviously, they have activities outside of school at weekends and possibly in the evening, but they are living on the campus the whole time. Now, there are 3 big holidays during the school year. There's the big long summer holiday, which is normally about 6 weeks. There's normally a holiday for our Christmas over in December for about 2 to 3 weeks, and the same in March, April for Easter. Now, obviously, because of the current situation, normally those 3 big holidays, Christmas, Easter and summer holidays, children would normally be returning home. This year, for instance, Christmas holidays, we're not asking children to return home. If they want to stay at school, they can. The school's basically going to be open all the time because obviously it's extraordinary circumstances. But normally the students are in school all the time, but then they go home for the holidays.
Şöyle, yatılı olarak konaklayan öğrenciler kampüste kalıyorlar az önce söylediğimiz gibi. Ancak Christmas'ta, Easter'da ve yaz dönemlerinde aslında normal şartlarda olsaydık evlerine gidebiliyorlardı. Ama şu anda Christmas'ta, Sarah, can they go back their homes for Easter, summer?
Yes, oh, absolutely. We would expect them to go home for those big holidays, but there's something called a half term, which always used to be a nuisance because it's a 1-week holiday right in the middle. We stay open so students don't have to go. So they would arrive, say, in September and then go back in December.
Okay. Şu anki hani şartlardan dolayı Christmas'ta hani eve gitmeye izin vermiyorlar ama tabii ki yazın ve hani Easter döneminde gidebilirler. Yani kampüs açık oluyor. Sarah.
Now, one thing that I often get asked is accommodation. You know, my children certainly had their own bedrooms at home. Going to a boarding school, you have to share. You have to share a bedroom. For us, we feel it's very, very important because teenagers, not all, but the majority of teenagers, if they're in a room on their own, the first thing they will do is open their laptop and they'll be on YouTube or doing something or whatever. If they're sharing a room, they communicate, they talk, they have a friend. So it's for the experience, it's not just the academic experience, but the cultural experience of being at a British boarding school. It's really important that you have friends, that you make really good friends. So no single rooms, sharing a room. Usually it's two to a room. And clubs, as I mentioned, and activities at the weekend. So basically the children are busy, you know, with lessons all day, and there's activities and clubs in the after school and also at weekends.
Odalar nasıl oluyor kampüste? Mutlaka paylaşımlı oluyor. Neden? Hani çünkü burada hani sadece akademik bir eğitim almaya gitmiyorlar aslında çocuklar. Hani kültürel anlamda da hani farklı bir deneyim yaşayabilmeleri için tek başına olduğunda hani bilgisayarını açıyorsun. Hani bir şekilde tamamen dünyadan uzak bir şekilde hani yaşıyorsun ama odanda biri olduğu zaman hani onunla bir şeyler paylaşıyorsun. Önemli olan da bu zaten. Bu yüzden de odalar paylaşımlı. Bunun dışında bir sürü aktivite var okulda. Yani dersten sonra odasına çekilmek zorunda değil. Bir sürü kulüp var, bir sürü sanatsal, sporla ilgili aktiviteler var yapabileceği.
Thank you. One of the things that we're often asked about is food, because food is incredibly important. Food makes you feel comfortable. It's, you know, if you're feeling a little bit homesick or if you're finding the weather's a little bit cold. So food is hugely important. And I am very proud to say that we have an excellent kitchen and an absolutely fantastic restaurant. So there's a massive buffet with lots and lots of different choices. At the moment, it's slightly different because of COVID-19. We've got different groups coming in at different times, but in normal times, it's just a big buffet. You've got plenty of choices, hot and cold food, different diets. Very, very high quality food. So they would have their breakfast and then they would have a meal at lunchtime. And then they will also have what we call supper. So an early evening meal. And then in the boarding houses, there are also kitchens. And this is a wonderful opportunity for students to, later on in the evening, they can make some snacks or something that they like. And a lot of them will bring food from home, because that gives them that feeling of just those tastes or flavors that they would enjoy at home.
Sure. Öğünler nasıl oluyor? Buna kesinlikle bu çok çok önemli okul için, Oswestry School için. Sabah, öğle, akşam yemekleri oluyor. Aynı zamanda yurtlarda da bir mutfak oluyor. Kendileri de bir şeyler pişirebilirler. Burada önemli olan aslında her damak tadına uygun, her hani dinin tercihlerine göre uygun menüler mevcut. Vejetaryen vesaire hani çeşitli menüler mevcut. Bu anlamda seçenek çok fazla ve hepsi de çok sağlıklı, hepsi denetleniyor. O şekilde sunuluyor öğrencilere. Sarah?
Thank you. Now, entry. This is something that I get asked all the time. So how can I know if my child is ready to join Oswestry School or whatever? Now, the most important thing, and whoever is watching this, you've already taken the first very important step, is to choose a really good educational consultant, because there are so many websites and there's so many advertising campaigns. It's very easy to get confused, because basically some schools or institutions will spend a lot of money saying, oh, this is the perfect school for your child. The most important thing is to choose a really good educational consultant who knows the schools. They will know lots and lots of schools in the UK. They will then start to look at your child and what's going to be the best school for them. So by the time Iceworld contact me with a potential pupil, they've already kind of worked out that this pupil is going to fit in very well at a particular school.
Thanks. Sarah. Burada önemli olan aslında hani giriş nasıl oluyor, hani başvurular nasıl oluyor? Bu süreçte size biz destek oluyoruz, biz yönlendiriyoruz. Sarah'ın da dediği gibi aslında okuldan önce iyi bir danışman seçmeniz çok çok önemli. İyi bir danışmanlık firması seçmeniz çok önemli. Çünkü yüzlerce okul var ve hani doğru okulun öğrenciyle eşleştirilmesi, doğru öğrenciyle eşleştirilmesi çok çok önemli. Bu da bir deneyim gerektiriyor aslında. Sarah.
Thank you. So where it starts, the very basic things that we need. So we need to know, we normally ask to see the child's passport. So that gives us their full name, their date of birth. And then we ask for school reports so we can see how they're doing. Now, there are lots of different schools. Some schools will only be looking at top A grade students. Some schools like Oswestry School have a mix of students, you know, various different, they don't have to be top grades. They can be medium grade. The most important thing to remember is the older the student is when they come to the UK to study, the better their level of English has to be. So obviously, if you're sending a child over at 12 or 13, their level of English can be, you know, okay. But if they're coming at 16 to do A-level study, and we'll talk a little bit later about how the UK education system works, they would need to be looking at sort of IELTS 5. So I would say that's always the thing to remember, is the older they are, the higher the level of English, because UK public examinations are really quite difficult, even for English students. So to add on that you're doing it in your second language, even if your English is quite good and you've been attending an international school, it's still a big challenge. So that's something always to remember.
Mm-hmm. Giriş şartlarıyla devam ediyoruz. Şöyle, bir kere her şeyden önce İngiltere'ye eğitim almaya geçecekseniz İngilizce seviyesi çok çok önemli. Yaşınız arttıkça aslında İngilizce seviyenizin de daha yüksek olmasını bekliyorlar. Birazdan İngiltere'deki eğitim sisteminden bahsedeceğiz ama hani şimdi kısaca şundan bahsedelim. Mesela GCSE programına başvuru için bu A-Level'dan önceki program oluyor. İngilizcenizin B1 seviyesinde olması gerekiyor. Yani IELTS 4 diyebiliriz aslında. Sixth Form için yani A-Level için İngilizcenizin B2 seviyesinde yani IELTS 5'e karşılık gelmesi gerekiyor. Bu sınav hakikaten çok zor bir sınav. İngilizler için bile zor bir sınav. Bunu da belirtelim. Sarah.
Thank you. So the normal thing is we get the passport. We look at the school reports, which have usually been translated by IceWorld, so that gives us some idea, because there's lots of, if your child is at a very, very high academic school, their report grades may not be as high as they would be in a school that's maybe not so high academically. So we need this feedback from educational consultants to help us build a picture of this pupil to find out what they're like. And then we will ask the student to do a maths test and an English test. So we can see where they are on that sort of map of their ability in English and maths. And most importantly, every student has an interview with the headmaster. So just a very, very informal chat to try and find out a little bit about them, what their dreams are, what their goals are, what they want to do, why they want to come to the UK. Is it their parents or is it the student? All those types of things. And these we take lots of notes from these interviews, and they start the process of getting to know somebody. It's a very nice way of finding out about a young person.
Yes, exactly. Nasıl seçiyorlar? Hani İngilizce dışında derslerinize bakıyorlar tabii ki. Not ortalamanız, tek tek hani hangi derslerden hangi notları aldınız bunlara bakıyorlar. Bunun haricinde de bir matematik ve İngilizce testi yapılıyor. Ve en önemlisi bir interview, bir mülakat gerçekleştiriliyor okul müdürüyle. Akabinde başvurunuzla ilgili kararlarını açıklıyorlar. Sarah.
Thank you. Now here we have the $1,000,000 question, which is what some people always ask me, is how much is the school fees? You know, there is no way of getting away from this. UK education, the cost is high. It is high, but then the quality is very high. It is the gold standard around the world, I think, in education. It's academic, but it's this whole 360-degree. You know, we get given children, and then they change. Those very challenging years between the ages of, say, 13 and 16, 17. It's so important that children feel acknowledged, appreciated, encouraged. And it's not always very easy as a parent when you have, you know, a teenage boy who's quite lazy and just wants to play on his video games or something. But it's so important that we encourage them. We encourage them to learn. And I think Oswestry School for over 600 years has been doing that.
Fiyatları görüyorsunuz burada. Dönemlik olarak aslında İngiltere'de bir yıl 3 dönemden oluşuyor. Dönemlik 11.475 pound mesela 2020-21 için yatılı okul fiyatları bunlar ve 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 bu yıllar için geçerli. Fiyatlar yüksek gelebilir aslında ama kalite de yüksek olduğu için fiyatlar yüksek aslında. Hani o şekilde açıklayabiliriz bunu. Sarah?
Thank you. So here we are. Here's the bad news, everyone, I'm afraid. The boarding fees per term, so from ages, say, from 14 up until 18, there are 3 terms a year, and we're looking at £11,475 per term. Now, for younger pupils, it's not as expensive. It's a huge amount of money. It's a big lump sum. However, I would say that when you start adding in that includes, you know, all the tuition, the clubs, weekend trips, food, laundry, picking them up from Manchester Airport, taking them back to Manchester Airport again at the end of the term. If you start breaking it down, it's slightly more palatable. It was, I have to say, on a personal note, having 4 children at boarding school was not easy. But, you know, my daughter went on to Cambridge, my son went on to Edinburgh, they all went to Russell Group universities. It was an investment. We had to make sacrifices. It was hard, but they did very, very well, and we were very happy with the school. But yes, there it is in black and white. There is the bad news, the school fees.
Okay. Fiyatlarla ilgili şöyle aslında şöyle bakarsak eğer bu fiyatlara konaklama dahil, öğünler dahil, işte çamaşır, havalimanında alma, havalimanına bırakma tatillerde, kitaplar, üniforma aslında çok fazla dahil olan şey var. Eğer bu açıdan bakarsak aslında evet çok büyük bir fedakarlık maddi anlamda ama hani hem kapsadığı şeylere bakmak gerekiyor hem de geri dönüşüne bakmak gerekiyor aslında. Sonuçta eğitim için bu fedakarlık yapılıyor. Sarah?
Thank you. So there's a little pic. So as you can see, it's not Harry Potter. It's not a big castle. The campus is lots of different buildings. Some are old, some are more modern around the campus. But I like this quote. We have something called the Good Schools Guide, which is kind of a very independent view of different schools. And it's a small, traditional British school, very personal approach, which I think is good. Now here we've got recent university successes. Now, obviously, these pupils are our top students, our top academic students. There are lots of other successes, but the ones that we focused on here are the academic successes. So we can see that physics, mathematics, I think we've got politics, philosophy, economics, and aerospace engineering. So, you know, for a lot of parents, this is the sort of areas of study that they're looking for their children to get into. They want them to do sort of business or economics or engineering or medicine or science. And you do have excellent universities in the UK. And coming into a school like Oswestry School gives you this good pathway to go through into university.
Buradaki gördüğünüz çocuklar aldıkları kabulleri görüyorsunuz burada. Mesela bir öğrenci Oxford'da fizik okuyor şu anda bir öğrencileri. UCL University College London'da şu an matematik okuyan bir öğrencileri var. Birmingham'da, University of Birmingham'da Aerospace Engineering okuyan var bir öğrenci. Onun dışında bir öğrenci de University College London'da politika, felsefe ve ekonomi okuyor. Bunlar sadece 4 tanesi aslında. Çok fazla kabul oranı yüksek bir okul. Sarah, there is a question. What is your university acceptance rate, university or college acceptance rate?
I've got it down here. I'm going to just jump forward a little bit.
There's a question.
I think it says, of our overseas pupils, 45% on average per year go on to the Russell Group universities. Now, Russell Group universities are the top 24 universities in the UK. What we have to remember is not every student is Russell Group university material. Not every student is going to get into a Russell Group university. I mean, in fact, I'm going to look at this one here. I remember personally this boy that got into Wolverhampton University to do. He was not academic. He was a fantastic footballer, but he was not an academic. But his parents were absolutely thrilled. It's not one of the top universities in the UK. It's a good university, but it's not a top Russell Group university. But he came, his English improved, he had a fantastic time, made lots of friends, his confidence grew in his academic ability.
Sarah, we can't hear you.
Of academic
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that okay now? Okay. So yeah, so this boy's family were absolutely thrilled that he got into a good university. So, you know, it depends on the student, but on average it's 45% to go to Russell Group. I think overall university applications per year, it's usually about 98%. Not everyone chooses to go to university. Some students, especially British students, may go and work in their family straight from school.
Okay. Üniversite kabul oranları ile ilgili bir soru geldi. Şöyle, mezunlarının %45'i Russell Group üniversitelerine kabul alıyorlar. Russell Group üniversiteleri de Birleşik Krallığın top ilk 24'teki okulu aslında. Oxford, Cambridge gibi okullar var bu okulların içerisinde. Ama tabii ki yani hepsi de hani Russell Group olması gerekmiyor sonuçta. Mesela burada az önce gösterdi, Wolverhampton Üniversitesi'ye bir öğrenci kabul almış. Bu okul Russell Group Üniversitesi değil, kötü bir okul da değil tabii ki, iyi bir okul. Ama Russell Group Üniversitesi değil, bu da olabilir. Sarah.
Thank you. So we're looking at the school day. Now the school day, just if any of you who are interested, I don't know what the schools are like. I guess there are different schools in Turkey, but international schools may be different to more local schools. But for us, we have 6 hours of lessons a day. So quite a long day. There's a 20-minute morning break and then 1 hour for lunch. And in each class, on average, there are 14 pupils.
Bir gün nasıl geçiyor aslında? 6 saatlik bir dersten oluşuyor. Artı 20 dakika bir sabahleyin bir ara veriliyor. 1 saatte öğle arası var, yemek arası var. Sarah.
Thank you. And then subjects. So obviously we have the traditional subjects like biology or chemistry or maths. But then we also have things like sports studies, which is anatomy and sports psychology. We have economics. We have drama now. You can take a public examination in drama. So there's lots of different subjects. For a small school, I think we have a really good selection of academic subjects to study at GCSE and A level. I think one thing to remember here, all pupils must participate in some form of physical education. Now that could be adventure education, you know, going climbing in the hills at the weekends. There's athletics, football, hockey. It's an intrinsic part of a British education is getting involved in the outdoors.
Dersler, burada dersleri görüyorsunuz, subjectleri. Çok fazla ders seçeneği var. Küçük bir okul olmasına rağmen aslında akademik anlamda hakikaten güçlü bir okul. İşte kimya, matematik, fizik gibi standart zaten olması gereken derslerin yanında sport studies var mesela, spor bilimi var. Religious studies var, psikoloji var, ekonomi var. Ders seçeneği çok fazla olan bir okul aslında. Yes, Sarah.
Thank you. So any pupil, so even if somebody's English is pretty fluent, every pupil who speaks English as their second language would be assessed by our EAL, English as an Additional Language Department, and they will get support. Now that could be between 3 and 5 hours per week that they would get of EAL support. They can take their IELTS qualifications in the 6th form. If they're younger, they take the Trinity English examinations. But every student is expected to progress and do well with their EAL.
Bunun dışında dersler haricinde az önce onu da ekleyeyim. Hafta sonları veya hafta içi dersten sonra yatılı okulda gerçekten başka bir hayat başlıyor aslında. Spor, sanatla ilgili yapılabilecek çok fazla aktivite var ve yani yapmaları da gerekiyor zaten. Öğrencilerden bu bekleniyor. İşte buz hokeyi, dağcılık gibi çok fazla seçenek var öğrencilerin kendini geliştirebileceği. Bunun dışında az önce bahsettiği gibi EAL dersleri, English as an Additional Language dersleri almak zorunda uluslararası öğrenciler. Yani İngilizcesi ana dili olmayan öğrencilerin bu dersi alması gerekiyor. Bu ders aslında ekstradan bir İngilizce desteği öğrencilere. Bu dersleri de geçmeleri gerekiyor. Bunun dışında haftada 3-5 saatlik bir İngilizce desteği alıyorlar öğrenciler. Sara.
Thank you. Now, I'm not sure if anyone who's watching this webinar, how familiar you are with the British education system. But we've got a little diagram here, which I hope will be quite useful. I hope you can see it. So basically, by the time you leave school and go on to university, you are only studying probably 3 subjects. So you are studying them at the same level as you probably will be when you get to university. So you're starting off, so between the ages of 11 and 14, you study every subject, every single subject that the school can offer, you're studying. Then I'll let you translate.
Thank you. Şimdi İngiltere'de kısaca hani eğitim sisteminden bahsedeceğiz. Biraz farklı diğer ülkelere kıyasla. Önce pre-GCSE alıyorlar öğrenciler A-Level'dan önce. Bu pre-GCSE döneminde 11 ila 14 yaş arasına tekabül ediyor aslında. Burada birçok subject, yani birçok ders alıyorlar. Çok fazla ders alıyorlar. Sara?
So then at the age of 14, so in the UK, at the age of 14, students start to diversify a little. For those students that are getting high academic grades, that want to go into science or medicine or this type of thing, they would go slightly down a more academic route of taking things like chemistry, biology, physics, quite tough subjects. That every student has to study maths, English, and some kind of science. For the slightly less academic, or maybe looking more to go into the arts, they would take more like a general science GCSE. So it's called the GCSE, it's the General Certificate of Secondary Education. It's a 2-year course, and you're normally studying between 5 and 8 subjects. But as I say, that must include maths, English, and some form of science.
Daha sonra pre-GCSE, yani GCSE hazırlıktan sonra GCSE programına başlanıyor. Burada daha ders sayısı biraz daha azalıyor. Biraz daha hani uzmanlaşmak istediğiniz hani alana doğru aslında. 5 ila 8 ders alıyorlar ve mutlaka bu derslerde matematik, İngilizce ve bir bilim dersi olmalı. Yani fizik, kimya, biyoloji gibi bir ders almak zorundalar. GCSE programı 2 yıl süren bir program. Sarah, there's a question about GCSE. Do you have fast track GCSE program?
We do. You can do them in 1 year. Now, so students can come in and do what we would call 5th form. It's year 11 in some schools. We all have different names for it. So you can do a 1-year GCSE course. Again, I would say GCSEs are quite difficult, even for UK people. So to be doing them in 1 year, the most important thing is, well, there's 2 factors. Level of English has got to be quite high. That's probably the most important thing. And also one has to be realistic of the number of subjects that you can take. If a student was coming in to do GCSEs in 1 year, we would not recommend more than 5 maximum to go through. It's quite tough. My daughter, who now teaches, she was at Cambridge for 9 years and she's now teaching at Berlin University. She told me that she could not go back and do her GCSEs now because you were having to be so good in so many different subjects It's really, really very difficult. So I would say, you know, maximum five.
Şöyle bir soru geldi. GCSE programı 2 yıl sürüyor aslında. 1 yılda tamamlamak mümkün mü? Mümkün ama bunun için İngilizce seviyenizin gerçekten çok çok yüksek olması gerekiyor ve maksimum hani 5 ders almanız gerekiyor 1 yılda tamamlayabilmek için. Ve çok da zor bu gerçekten. Bir soru daha var. Okay, burslarla ilgili bir soru var. Bahsedeceğiz ondan birazdan. Sara.
Yes, and then obviously we get to the pinnacle. We're almost there. You know, all these years of parents paying school fees, and we're almost there. We're almost getting to university now. We've got the last 2 years. So, A level. Now, this is when it is very difficult because as you know, I'm sure, there is the International Baccalaureate, but for many UK boarding schools, we don't offer it. We offer A level. So the level that you're studying at is pretty intense. What we're trying to do is, although this narrows down to just a few subjects, if you choose very carefully and you work with your school, you can choose subjects that will open a lot of doors. Well, although this is getting narrower in terms of subject numbers, you know, the number of subjects you're studying, with careful consideration, you can choose subjects that will open many, many different university courses, because not everyone is 100% sure what they want to study at university, even at 16.
Şöyle, A-Level programına geliyoruz şimdi. A-Level programı da 2 yıl süren bir program. Burada 4 tane ders seçiyorsunuz. Tabii 4 ders olması sizi yanıltmasın. Hakikaten çok ağır bir program. Burada seçeceğiniz dersler çok çok önemli aslında. Hani üniversitede ne okumak istediğinize karar verdiyseniz, eğer gerçekten bundan eminseniz sorun yok. Ama emin değilseniz o kadar hani dikkatli seçim yapmanız gerekiyor ki burada danışmanlar sizi yönlendiriyor zaten okullardaki ve biz de aynı şekilde yönlendiriyoruz. O kadar hani doğru bir seçim olması gerekiyor ki seçeceğiniz alan hani kısıtlanmasın. Çünkü her bir bölüm için her bölümün istediği şartlar, istediği dersler çok farklı oluyor. Sara?
Yes, and just to say, from my own children, I also had 2 who decided at the age of 16 that they both wanted to study. One wanted to study Russian and one wanted to study Chinese. They both went on, they both did masters eventually. So this is suddenly, you'd be amazed at the change that you can get in teenagers at 16, 17, that they suddenly, it's as if their eyes are open to the world of education and they suddenly start to take things very seriously and realize that they can study all these amazing things at wonderful universities. So it's a very important time in their life, and you can get big changes, but often it's a wonderful process.
Yes, exactly. Hayatımın aslında en önemli dönemi bu, A-Level dönemi. Orada seçeceğiniz dersler gerçekten hayati önem taşıyor. Yes,
now we're going to cover, this just gives you some idea of the different courses available in UK universities. So as I say, we have high academic students who are going to be studying things like, you know, aerospace engineering or physics. But there are also lots of, you know, international business and finance, sports coaching, business management. There are journalism studies. There are so many different courses in the UK at universities. So there's a course for everyone. Now, I think one of the things that you probably will be wondering is where Oswestry is, which is quite low down on this presentation. So everybody knows London. Everybody knows London. I think a lot of people have heard of Manchester because of the well-known football teams. But this is Wales here, and then that's where Oswestry School is. So we are in England. We're not a Welsh school, we're in England. And that area is called Shropshire. So you can see it's more or less in the middle of the country.
Burada lokasyonunu görüyorsunuz okulun, İngiltere'de.
There we are. So I'm going to stop sharing that now, because I'm sure you've got questions for me, especially given the current situation, crazy situation that's going on everywhere. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them or do my best.
Yes, there is a question about COVID-19. How is the situation now at Oswestry School? Are you doing online instruction, in person?
Well, I'm going to take a sip of water because I'm going to talk now for quite a long time about this. I'm sorry. Obviously, it came as a massive shock in March when everything was, schools were instructed by the government to close. So the most important thing was the health and safety of the pupils. So pupils had to return home, those that were living overseas. And the whole school, I don't know quite how the headmaster managed this, but although it's a very old school, he's for the last few years, he's been put in a fantastic IT system. So we straight away, very, very quickly went online. So the whole school day was online. So children had to be online in the morning. They had to do their register. They had their different lessons during the day. They had to break for lunch, obviously, at home. So parents, the challenge for some of our students was the time difference, but we worked around this. But the reaction from parents and from pupils was overwhelmingly good because it gave stability and continuity and something that desperately people wanted to hold on to.
Excellent. And now is the instruction? And
now it's different. So now, obviously the school has opened again. Massive process of work that went on throughout the campus all over the summer. The most visible being things like so many extra places to wash your hands, so many hand sanitizers. But it's a very, how can I say this? COVID-19 is absolutely terrible, but boarding schools are used to dealing or planning, shall I say, for infectious diseases. Because if you have a school, you always have to have a plan in place in case there's some kind of infectious disease like gastroenteritis or something like this that would come in a school. So obviously this was a mega serious case, but the plans were all there. So for instance, we have day pupils and we have boarding pupils. Day pupils, the parents have had to sign a contract. So every morning, the parents have to take the children's temperature. They have to check that they haven't got any cough and that they haven't altered their taste of smell or taste. And the same thing happens in the boarding houses. So the children that are living on the campus, the staff there do the same thing. So there are then, when they come into school, when they come into the main school area, you have bubbles. So you have lower school, the school is segmented into different bubbles, and those bubbles stick together. They don't really cross over. They don't eat lunch together anymore. The first bubble of lower school has to go in and have their lunch, and then they come out, then they go in and clean, and the second one comes in. So there is a very clear framework of how things should be and how they work. Masks are not compulsory unless you are in close proximity. And obviously we're keeping an eye on the weather because it gets cold here. So we still have to have windows open, but we can't have them as open as we would have done normally in the spring. So masks might come in a little bit more. We have some students who are still not back at school. Thai government has said they can't come back at the moment. So they're not having exactly the same provision as the students, all the students had, because it's impossible, but they're still having an online provision and they have contact time with their form tutors and this kind of thing. It's something that every day is being reviewed because things change. But the other thing that I would say is, as I mentioned right at the beginning of this, Oswestry School is a very small, very safe town. People socially distance anyway because there just aren't that many people. So everybody's quite used to, it's just a very slow pace of life. And also, sorry, one other thing, picking up from the airport. It's the school driver is in the airport. He works for the school. he's wearing school uniform, so the students come off the plane straight into the school bus, or they sanitize on the school bus. So there's very little risk of them. They're not traveling. At the moment, they cannot go. Normally they would go into town, you know, maybe after school or on Saturdays, maybe walk down, do a little bit of shopping. Unfortunately, not at the moment. They must stay in school where they're safe. There's a lot for you to translate there.
Sorry. Okay. Şimdi şöyle, pandemiyle ilgili olan süreci biraz konuştuk aslında. Bir kere Mart ayı ile beraber tabii ki online eğitime çok hızlı bir şekilde geçmişler. Çünkü IT departmanları hakikaten çok güçlü. Daha sonrasında yani şu anda birçok öğrenci, uluslararası öğrenci şu an okulda. Gelemeyenler işte kendi hükümetlerinde işte bir takım kısıtlamalar olduğu için gelemiyorlar aslında. Mesela Tayland dedi az önce. Onun dışında içeride tüm güvenlik önlemleri alınmış bir durumda. Aslında burada en önemli şey Oswestry School küçük bir yer olduğu için, yani okulun lokasyonu bulunduğu yer küçük bir yer olduğu için hani zaten sosyal mesafe kurallarına uymaya gerek yok. Zaten çok fazla insan olmadığı için aslında hani böyle bir durum söz konusu. İçeride de sürekli bir takım testler yapılıyor. İşte grup alıyorlar mesela yemeğe, aktivitelere. Derslere daha doğrusu, aktivitelere şu an kısıtlama var tabii ki. Yani önlemler alınmış bir durumda. Şu an eğitim devam ediyor yüz yüze bir şekilde. There's someone who wants to talk. Sorry,
Yeah.
just seconds. Bir soru sormak isteyen biri vardı galiba ama söz almak istedi. Ama şu an yok galiba.
But I hope that answers some of the concerns. You know.
Sorry. Okay.
You might need to unmute them.
No, she will talk. Just a second.
Okay.
Hande Hanım bir soru sormak istiyor. Okay, she's here.
Okay.
Hande Hanım dinliyoruz sizi. Mikrofonunuz kapalı şu an.
I think her microphone is muted.
Yeah. She disconnected. Okay, there's a question about scholarships, Sarah.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, of course, absolutely. What I'd like to say is there are scholarships. Scholarships are pretty tough. You know, you've got to be a high achiever, and they're normally for academic ability or very high sports. But you know, there's a very funny English expression. If you want to describe somebody as an all-round, they're called a good egg. You describe somebody as a good egg, and what we have is a headmaster's award, which is like a good egg award. If you have a student who's prepared to work hard, they don't have to be fantastically A-star brilliant, but if they're going to work hard and if they have some kind of talent, so maybe they're really good at swimming, or maybe they're really good at football, or maybe they are just a generally, you know, really hardworking student, we would be very happy to consider them for scholarships. The amount, it's difficult to say. I would say I have seen scholarships of 50%, but those are quite rare. I would say that if you're looking average, if the headmaster is impressed by a pupil and he feels that they would benefit from an education at Oswestry School, you can be looking for a scholarship around 25%, 30% would, I think, be more reasonable, really. I think it's more likely. So it's difficult to give exact parameters of who would qualify for a scholarship, because it really depends on the person. You know, we once were approached with a boy who was a fantastic mathematician, but we met him and he just sat there like that and he didn't say anything. And, you know, we didn't feel we were the right school for him. We need, you know, we want people that will participate in school life and enjoy it, you know, not somebody who's going to shut themselves in their room all the time. So it's, it really depends on the person, but I think 25-30% would probably be a realistic figure, if that helps.
Yes. Şimdi bursla ilgili bir soru geldi. Klasik soru. Şimdi burs oranları sadece akademik başarıya bağlı değil. Bir yeteneğinizin olması gerekiyor mutlaka. Yani işte yüzmede iyi olabilirsiniz, futbolda hani bir takım yarışmalara katılmanız gerekiyor tabii ki. İyi derken hani bunu belgeleyebilmeniz çok önemli. Akademik başarının yanında buna da bakıyorlar. Yani komple dosyaya bakıyorlar aslında. Sadece transkriptlerinize, not dökümlerinize bakmıyorlar bunun için. Burslarda rakamları değişebiliyor dosyaya göre, öğrenciye göre değişiyor aslında. Onunla ilgili kesin bir şey söylemek şu an mümkün değil. Okay, Sarah, just a second, any more questions? Okay. Beyza Nur Hanım, someone will ask a question.
Great.
Beyza Nur Hanım.
Merhaba.
Merhaba.
Burslarla ilgili soru soracaktım. Cevapladınız şimdi. Teşekkürler.
Tamam, rica ederim. Var mı başka sorunuz?
Şunu sorabilirim. Ya not ortalaması ne kadar önemli? Sanırım lise ortalaması da önemli burs almak için. Ne kadar önemli onu sorabilirim.
Okay. Sarah, what is the importance of GPA for scholarship?
We don't really look at that type of thing. It's, as I say, it's more a question of looking at the whole person. I think grades or achievement, academic achievement is one part of a jigsaw, but we're also looking at the student's personality. We want to know a little bit more about them. So it's a helpful indicator, but we're not the type of school that's offering these high achieving students these large scholarships. It's a slightly different approach here. Obviously, the higher the grades, the higher their scores, the more likely it is that they will probably get a scholarship for sure. But it would be we don't have a strict parameter. So I'm sorry I can't answer that more fully.
No, it's clear. Thank you, Sarah. Bu not ortalamasıyla ilgili de az önce bahsettiğimiz gibi aslında ne kadar önemli diye sordu Beyza Nur Hanım ama burada aslında tüm dosyaya bakıyorlar. Hani tüm dosyadaki sadece transkripti yani referanslar, başarıları hani bunlar çok önemli, yetenekleri çok önemli aslında. O yüzden hani net bir şey söylemek not ortalaması ile ilgili pek mümkün değil. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Thank you very much for your participation, Sarah. It was a very productive meeting.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. You did a fantastic job translating, and I just wanted to say thank you very much to everybody that's participated and taken the time, and I hope it's been of some interest to them.
Sure. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz katılımınız için. Bugün Oswestry School'la birlikte İngiltere'de Lise Eğitimini konuştuk. Çok verimli bir görüşme oldu bence. Sorularınız için bize ulaşabilirsiniz. Bir sonraki webinarımızda görüşmek üzere.
Bye now.